Welcome, everyone, to another week of Three Things to Watch. I'm Carly Smith, and thankful to be in the studio today with Rob Washburn. Now, Rob, it's that time of the year where, if you haven't already, fasten your seatbelt, because any week in the CAA, anything can happen. It's a conference that currently has 5 teams nationally ranked, 3 receiving votes, but we know this. Rankings don't really mean anything when you're playing between the lines. Okay, first, let's start with 2 teams who are receiving national attention and going head-to-head in Week 5. Number 16, Villanova at UAlbany. I'll tell you what, Rob, I know Greg Gattuso and his guys are ready to have a few home-cooked meals this week after being on the road for 3 straight games. This team is resilient. They're 2-2 so far on the season, but 2 of their losses came from near misses against FBS opponents, while their most recent Week 4 win came in double overtime against a much improved and well-coached Morgan State squad. Now, Villanova made some noise in Week 4 after a huge win against nationally ranked Rhode Island. They're playing with a ton of depth right now, and Rob, those guys, they play hard. It's a tough-nosed defense. They're athletic and quick to the ball, and well, their offense just put up 35 points against the Rams. Connor Watkins with 113 rushing yards and a career-high 3 touchdowns in that victory. So the Wildcats playing sound football in all 3 phases. Should be a very competitive game in upstate New York.
Yeah, Carly, this game features 2 of the most talented and versatile quarterbacks in the CA with UAlbany's Reese Poffenbarger and Villanova's Connor Watkins. But for those guys to have success on Saturday, they're going to have to deal with a pair of outstanding defenses. The Great Danes are giving up just 304 yards and 20 points per game despite facing high-powered Fordham and 2 FBS opponents in the first 3 weeks. UAlbany has a ferocious pass rush with 16 quarterback sacks and 28 tackles for loss, led by Anton Junka and A.J. Simon up front and tackling machine Dylan Kelly at linebacker. In the secondary, Amir Hall has picked off a pair of passes and broken up 5 others. Now, on the other side is a Villanova defense that is allowing just 13 points and 261 yards against 3 FCS opponents. Last week's performance was their best, holding Rhode Island's dangerous attack to just 9 points and 241 yards, despite missing top tackler Shane Hartzell. Brendan Bell, Danny Abraham, and Turner Inge had big games, and Jalen Goodman, one of the veterans of an experienced secondary, intercepted a pass. Both of these defenses have been excellent thus far and will need to be at their best again on Saturday for their team to get a big conference win.
Let's hear what UAlbany's Greg Gattuso and Villanova's Mark Ferrante had to say leading up to the game.
He's a really good player. You know, he's the quarterbacks of today are mobile and can throw, and it puts so much stress on a defense. I think that's the trend is obviously we have the same kind of guy, and he does present a lot of problems. They're a good team. He operates very well within the structure of his offense, and now you got to account for him at all times. You got to know where he is and what he's doing back there.
They're really good. They're aggressive. You know, as you mentioned, those 2 losses against FBS opponents could have definitely went their way, and they found a way to, win a tough one this past weekend, which when teams are resilient and find ways to win those close games, even when you're not playing really well or playing perfect, it just builds character. So it's going to be another very well, evenly matched, competitive CA contest.
Kickoff is at 3:30 p.m. in Albany, New York on Flow Football. All right, moving on to our second thing to watch. Richmond plays host to Hampton for a nice in-state battle at Robins Stadium. Hampton's coming off the bye week where Coach Robert Prunty told us it was a good opportunity to just get back to the basics and heal up for a challenge in Week 5. This is a team now who leads the league in rushing and will be tested in their first conference game, of course. Richmond's faced some early adversity, especially with injuries at the QB spot, but thankfully for the Spiders, there's a ton of veteran experience on that roster, experience that knows what it takes to fight each week in the CAA. So they found a way to win on Long Island last week in very windy and wet conditions against Stony Brook. And so hopefully, Rob, the weather's a little more settled this week in Richmond, but despite the forecast, we know that it'll be a good one.
Yeah, when you're watching this game, keep your eyes on 2 of the top linebackers, not only in the CAA, but FCS football. Hampton's Quasin Townsend recorded 100 tackles a year ago and is on pace to shatter that mark in 2023 with 33 stops over the first 3 games. He's been the Pirates' leading tackler in all 3 contests and is the unquestioned leader of a young group that is really coming together. Now for Richmond is Tristan Wheeler, who's made 100 or more tackles 3 times in his remarkable career and has tallied 46 stops and 4 tackles for loss so far this season. He leads all active players at Division I, II, and III in career tackles. As Carly touched on, Hampton is averaging a CAA best 251 yards per game on the ground this season, behind Elijah Burris and Darren Butts. And with its injuries at quarterback, Richmond will likely lean heavily on Savon Smith, who is coming off a career-high 106 rushing yards at Stony Brook last week. Expect Townsville and Wheeler to be in the middle of a lot of collisions on Saturday as these teams look to pick up an important CAA victory.
Let's hear from Hampton's Robert Prunty and Richmond's Russ Huesman on the matchup to come.
They got good receivers. Number 11 is a good player. Just a good overall football team. We got to be able to stand up to them on the line of scrimmage. It's going to come down to the game of the trenches. I think that, once again, they're big up front and on the O-line and the D-line.
Offensively, their backs are tremendous. I mean, we're going to have to do a great job of gang tackling. I'm not sure if we can, if we're one-on-one in open space, whether we can get them down or not, we're going to have a lot of bodies around them. So we know it's going to be a test for our defense, no question about that.
Kickoff is at 2 p.m. on Flow Football. We'll be tuning in for sure. Okay, finally, our third thing to watch features a very highly anticipated matchup and one that always seems to live up to the hype. Always. Elon, who plays very well at home, will host the 4-0 National Team of the Week, William and Mary. The Tribe is undefeated on the season and hasn't lost a conference game since, playing Elon last season. So both teams are coming off Week 4 wins. William and Mary with a convincing 28-3 victory over Maine, and Elon going on the road to beat Campbell 28-24. Rob, you can say so much about William and Mary, but that defense, it's something else. It's the third straight game in which the defense didn't surrender a touchdown, and they held the Black Bears to 138 total yards and just 7 first downs. But they're in for a huge challenge against Elon, who carries some of the most lethal playmakers offensively in the league, one being our CAA Player of the Week, Jalen Hampton. Rob, what do you expect to see go down at Rhodes Stadium?
I'm expecting another hard-fought competitive game between two programs that have produced a lot of down-to-the-wire thrillers over the last few seasons. Since you've already set the storyline, let's dive into some numbers. William and Mary's defense ranks number 1 in FCS in fewest points and yards allowed. The Tribe's especially tough against the run, giving up 70 yards per game on just 2.4 yards per carry. None of their 4 opponents has rushed for more than 103 yards, and in the past 2 weeks, they've given up a combined 73 yards on the ground. Everyone knows about Nate Lynn and John Pius, but they're also getting great years from linebackers Kevin Jarrell and Isaiah Jones. Now, they line up against an Elon rushing attack that has averaged 251 yards in their 2 conference wins. Leading that charge has been Jalen Hampton, who has run for 153 yards and 169 yards in the past 2 weeks and hasn't been held under 77 yards all season. He's averaging 6 yards per carry and has reached the end zone 5 times. Something is going to have to give. Now, dismissing the COVID season, the past 3 meetings between these teams have been decided by 4 points or less, including the Tribe winning a 5 overtime game in 2019 and the Phoenix overcoming a 15-point fourth quarter deficit a year ago. No reason to think we're not going to get another game down to the wire again on Saturday.
Here we go. Here's what William and Mary's Mike London and Elon's Tony Trisciani had to say about the game.
It's going to be a tough game. Tough game offensively. They've got the running back. Obviously, Hampton is. He's a great player, and he's got a group of players around him that can help. The quarterback does everything he needs to do to keep you honest. And, they got a good offensive line. And so, but I believe that we got a pretty good offense as well. And so it'll be interesting to see, can our defense play better than their offense and vice versa. So excited by the challenge and another league game. And so here we go.
Yeah, well, it's a veteran group, and they know their scheme. They are who they are. When you've got 2 talented edge rushers like they do, and veteran linebackers and veteran guys on the perimeter and out back, they're playing fast, they're playing physical, and, it'll be a big test for us on Saturday night.
This game kicks off at 2 p.m. on My 48 and Flow Football. You're going to want to tune into that one. All right, now let's take a look at all of the action happening around the league this weekend. Monmouth and Rhode Island both play host to non-conference opponents. Rhode Island's facing their in-state rivals in Bryant in front of a sold-out crowd. That'll be a great one to watch. Whereas North Carolina A&T travels to play Norfolk State, and Campbell pays a visit to last year's MEAC champion, North Carolina Central. Excited to see another week of very competitive league games especially in the Northeast as New Hampshire welcomes Towson and Maine hosts Stony Brook. For all things CAA football, make sure you visit CAAfootball.com, and as always, follow along on social media at CAA Football. Have a great weekend, everyone.